to produce an intense visionary hallucinogen. This is an extremely interesting and, to this day, unanswered question.
It tastes horrible, by the way. It tastes, my version of what it tastes like is maybe 4-day-old espresso that someone had put out a cigarette in with a dash of lemon. And so you gag it down, and then after a while your mind starts to have a plasticity and an openness, and it remains that way for about 4 or 5 hours, which is can be quite beautiful. If you've seen any of the tapestries of the inner mind cathedral in the DMT state, that extends it for hours. So it's kind of a shame not to take ayahuasca if you're going to do DMT, because geez, you can extend the journey to several hours.
Well, DMT is a tryptamine, so is LSD. LSD is a laboratory invention. It's a chemical modification of an ergot alkaloid. But in terms of their, pharmacology, they're quite similar. They both impact certain kinds of serotonin receptors in the brain, through which most people propose that these drugs have their effects. I would say the main difference is that DMT is quite short-acting and LSD is quite long-acting. But in terms of on the spectrum of effects, they're quite comparable in terms of the perceptual and emotional and the cognitive responses to consuming the drug or the compound. Also, DMT is a compound that is, found in all kinds of animals and plants, and LSD isn't a natural product. It isn't found in the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom. In ayahuasca, the effects of DMT begin a lot slower, probably within a half hour, maybe an hour, and they peak in around 2 to 3 hours, and they usually resolve between around 6 hours or so. So even though it's a slower effect, the quality of the response is the same.
LSD was always a bit of a commitment, because that you've got at least 8 hours that you're committed to this altered state, and so you have to arrange your life wisely to support that. And this is just a little more manageable, I think. In some ways, it's also very clean and very clear, and you don't feel any body load afterward. You feel uplifted, you feel like vitalized, you feel like you need less sleep, and you feel that you've addressed yourself on a deep level. A lot of deep issues came up for me.
I've had experiences with ayahuasca and ibogaine. They've been very profound and important experiences in my life. And they've helped me, I feel, to grow on many levels. And I've written about them extensively in my books, Breaking Open the Head, and 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl. I feel like they gave me insights into my personal psychology, visions about better paths to take. They kind of acted as kind of antidepressants that lifted my spirits up and made me see these other layers or possibilities of reality. So they've been very important experiences for me.
Telepathic and group mind states are induced by this particular plant mixture, and it's particularly interesting in the light of the fact that the chemical constituents which make it go are in fact found endogenously in the human brain. These are not exotic compounds from the point of view of ordinary human brain chemistry. So there is a suggestion there that manipulation of neurohumoral compounds, brain neurotransmitters, and that sort of thing may in fact open the door to untapped areas of human potential.
One of the games my brother liked to play with the mushrooms was, in this dialogue situation, he was always saying, tell me something I can't possibly know, right? And that will validate that it's not me, that this is coming from. I don't know that he ever succeeded in getting it. It's very cagey, they're very tricky that way. It's, but occasionally they do seem to tell people things that they can't possibly know, or that they've never thought about in quite that way. Now it's come out, for example, that, Crick's insight into the structure of DNA was assisted by LSD, and he reluctantly but finally admitted that was a big influence. And many computer scientists, Steve Jobs has said LSD's been very useful for his creativity. Kary Mullis, the Nobel Prize winner who figured out the PCR chain reaction, has been quite upfront about it. LSD gave him the ability to get down with the molecules and see what's happening. In some sense, there is a communication. In some sense, the question isn't even valid, because where do the boundaries between the self and the world exist? We're not really separate. I mean, we're part of this information field. And, this notion that consciousness, I do think that consciousness it's like a property of the continuum. It's like the old physicist concept of the ether or something. It kind of permeates everything, and it's not really localized in the human brain or necessarily even generated by the human brain.
Why does the brain require DMT for normal function if this is indeed true? Yeah, and it's hard to say. I think that perhaps one of the functions of ordinary levels of DMT is kind of like a, kind of reality thermostat. If you have a certain kind of narrow window of levels of DMT in the brain, it maintains this ordinary level of, perceptual, consensus reality that most of us live in. Kind of like the endo matrix in a way, as opposed to like an externally applied, psychological or, consciousness kind of matrix like in the movie. This is one that's internally generated.
But it may be that the brain is a place where it becomes focused and concentrated.